Have you ever wondered what it feels like to be an undefeated lawyer? The one everyone calls when they're in a seemingly impossible situation? Imagine a career built on finding loopholes, bending the rules, and charming juries. Track record so flawless, you start to believe you're invincible. That was me. The guy who could get anyone off. The one who saw the law not as a set of rules for justice, but as a game to be won. And I was the reigning champion. My latest case was the biggest of my career. A powerful CEO, accused of a massive financial fraud that had ruined thousands of lives. The evidence against him was stacked high, a mountain of documents and damning testimony. But to me, it was just another puzzle. Bigger, more complex challenge. Sure, but a challenge I was ready to conquer. The pay was astronomical. The media attention was intense. And the victory would cement my legacy as the greatest legal mind of my generation. I dived in, working day and night, fueled by coffee and ego. I tore apart the prosecution's case, piece by piece. I found inconsistencies in witness statements, exploited procedural errors, and prepared to paint my client as a scapegoat, a victim of a corporate witch hunt. In my mind, the trial was already won before it even began. I had my strategy, my narrative, and my unwavering confidence. Justice was about who told the better story, and nobody told a better story than me. The trial started just as I'd planned. I was in my element, cross-examining witnesses with surgical precision, turning their own words against them. The prosecution seemed to be fumbling, their star witnesses crumbling under the pressure of my questions. I could feel the jury shifting, their doubts growing. My client would smirk at me from the defendant's table, a look of smug satisfaction. We were a team, and we were winning. Each day was a performance, and I was the star. I'd go home at night not thinking about the victims, the people who lost their life savings. I only thought about the next day's moves, the next checkmate in my legal chess game. The concept of right and wrong had been replaced by winning and losing. Then, the prosecution called a surprise witness. Her name was Eleanor Vance. She wasn't a high-powered executive or a financial expert. She was a retired school teacher in her late 60s, with kind eyes and a steady, calm demeanor. She had been the CEO's administrative assistant for over 30 years, from the very beginning of his career. On paper, she wasn't a threat. Her testimony was supposed to be about scheduling and routine office tasks. I barely even prepped for her, dismissing her as a minor character in this grand play. That was my first mistake. When she took the stand, the atmosphere in the courtroom changed. She spoke not with anger or bitterness, but with a quiet, profound sadness. She described my client not as the monster the prosecution painted, but as the ambitious young man she first worked for. She talked about his dreams, his early principles. Then, she detailed, with heartbreaking clarity, the exact moment he chose a different path. She presented a small, worn-out ledger, one the prosecution had missed, one that wasn't digital or part of the official discovery. It was her personal record. In it, she had meticulously noted, in her own elegant handwriting, every single illicit transaction, every secret meeting, every order to hide the truth. She hadn't done it for revenge. She explained she did it because she had hoped for years that he would remember the man he once was and make things right. As she spoke, she wasn't just presenting facts. She was telling the story of a moral collapse. She looked over at my client, and for the first time, I saw something other than arrogance on his face. I saw a flicker of shame. Eleanor Vance wasn't trying to win a case. She was simply telling the truth. And her truth was more powerful than any legal strategy I could ever devise. For the first time in my career, I was speechless. I had no questions for her. Cross-examining this woman would be like trying to cross-examine integrity itself. It would have been a sacrilege. In that moment, sitting in that silent courtroom, everything I thought I knew about my profession, about winning, about justice, it all shattered. I saw the faces of the jury. They weren't looking at me with admiration anymore. They were looking at Eleanor, and through her they were seeing the real victims. They saw the retired couples who lost their homes, the families who lost their futures. The mountain of evidence was one thing, but this one woman's quiet, unimpeachable testimony was the avalanche that buried my case and my entire worldview for good. The numbers on a page were abstract, but the pain in her voice was real. She had brought the human cost into the room, and it was a price my legal gymnastics couldn't cover. I looked at my client, who refused to meet my gaze, and I knew it was over. Not just the trial, but my winning streak, my perfect record. But what I lost in professional pride, I gained in something far more valuable. I realized that justice isn't a game. It's not about the smartest lawyer or the cleverest argument. It's a fundamental human need. A force as real and as powerful as gravity, and you can't fight it forever. You can delay it, you can obscure it, you can try to talk your way around it, but sooner or later, it finds a way. Sometimes it arrives in the form of overwhelming evidence, and other times, it arrives in the form of a quiet, courageous schoolteacher with a little black book and an unwavering moral compass. My perfect record was broken, but for the first time I felt like I was on the right side of things. The verdict was guilty. My client received a long sentence. I didn't feel the sting of defeat. Instead, I felt a strange sense of relief, of release. After the trial, I walked over to Eleanor Vance. I didn't know what I was going to say, but I just had to speak to her. I simply said, "Thank you." She looked at me, her kind eyes holding no judgment, and she just nodded. In that moment, I decided I was done playing games. My career didn't end that day. It began. I started taking on cases for people who couldn't afford a high-powered lawyer, people who were fighting for what was right, not just for what was winnable. I learned that the most profound victories aren't the ones that fill your bank account, but the ones that restore your faith in humanity. That day in court, I didn't lose. I was saved. Saved from my own ego, my own ambition, and my own blindness. I learned that true strength isn't about being undefeated. It's about knowing what's worth fighting for. And sometimes, the most important battles are the ones we fight within ourselves. Justice found me that day, not as an opponent, but as a guide, showing me a better way forward. Thanks for listening to my story. If you found this meaningful, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more content that explores the deeper side of our shared human experience. Until next time.